Almost as soon as they heard the sound, the three of them jumped up. Without even half a second, Lin Sanju turned her palm and was holding the chef's knife as she asked sternly, "Who's that?" Her cold tone of her voice resonated in the darkness. "Ah, don't be nervous. It's me. I am Kong Yun from downstairs," there was a reply from the dark corridor in front of the nanny's room. Kong Yun sounded a little tired yet quite seemingly gratified. "That's great. So you guys have flashlights," she said and walked toward them even without an invitation to enter the apartment. "Flashlight? Where?" The three of them immediately realized what Kong Yun was talking about and silently cursed about it. The ability polishing agent was really too bright, so much so that Kong Yun could see the light that it emitted even from the emergency door. At this point, they could hear Kong Yun's slow footsteps approaching. In a moment of anxiety, Marcy kicked the ability polishing agent toward the sofa. Just before the little bottle hit the sofa, it disappeared into countless fragments of light and integrated itself into the sofa. The living room suddenly became dark. "Huh, why did you switch off the flashlight? I can't see anything," Kong Yun commented, sounding rather dissatisfied. Lin Sanju frowned her brow slightly. She had a sudden inspiration and quickly replied, "That was my mobile phone. It just ran out of battery. Big Sister Kong, didn't we ask you to wait for us in your apartment? Why did you come up?" After a pause, she surfaced her doubts. "So, how did you know that I lived here?" Taking this opportunity while they talked, she placed her hand on the leg of the corpse. There was a brief white light, and the floor became empty. Just as she squished the card into her hand, Kong Yun made her way to the living room, groping in the dark. The very moment she stepped into the living room, Luther lit up his lighter. Under the orange-red glow, Kong Yun looked somewhat pathetic. Her face and body were covered in sweat, and her strands of hair were pasted to her forehead. Feeling their gaze, she gave Lin Sanju an embarrassed chuckle. "The security guard told me once that you and your boyfriend were the owners of the top floor. Your apartment is situated way too high. I feel very tired after climbing up from the 26th floor." Even though she had already evolved, that was not something surprising. Without the strength enhancement, not everyone had as good a physique as Lin Sanju. Just after Lin Sanju placed the knife down, and with her heart still pinning to look at the paper on the floor, she forced a smile. "Big Sister Kong, why did you come up?" "Nothing really." Kong Yun looked a little hard-pressed. "I was alone in my apartment, and my husband is still missing. I just felt frightened." This wasn't something incomprehensible. The three of them looked at each other, and Luther suddenly gave Kong Yun a grin, showing his set of white teeth. "Big Sister Kong, it's great that you are here. It saved us the trouble of going downstairs to get you. You see, we brought some rice here so that we could cook a bit of porridge. Do you want to eat some?" Lin Sanju clapped silently in her heart. That was a brilliant excuse. Otherwise, the scene of them standing randomly in the middle of the living room did felt rather unnatural. Ads by PubFuture. Kong Yun was visibly distracted as she looked at the sack of rice, then she began to laugh. "Why not? Even though that rice is not suitable to make porridge, but that's a good idea. You all should rest, let me cook." "Okay, let me help." Marcy carried the sack of rice and headed to the kitchen. Kong Yun could not help being curious about Marcy. She quickly followed behind her asking, "Your Mandarin is really good. Where are you from?" After seeing the two of them chatting, entering the kitchen, starting to make preparation for cooking the porridge, Luther finally handed a hard piece of something calmly to Lin Sanju. It turned out that he managed to retrieve the paper on the ground at some time. "So, this is..." Lin Sanju was just about to say something when the young man interrupted her. "Let's discuss this when we go back." "Go back? You mean you are not planning to bring her to the supermarket?" Lin Sanju reacted quickly. He seemed to have said that instinctively, without thinking much about it. Hearing her words, he frowned, showing a conflicted look. Indeed, not bringing Kong Yun and leaving her, a recently evolved, almost powerless person outside, seemed rather unkind. On the other hand, since they did not share any life and death situation with her, they could not trust her, so it did not seem appropriate to bring her back to the supermarket either. "Let's observe first. Maybe she has her own plans, so we don't have to help her make that decision," Lin Sanju comforted Luther after seeing his somewhat hilarious scrunched-up face. Kong Yun probably cooked often at home. The lack of light did not hinder her nimble movement. She diced the vacuum-packed saltwater chicken, added some seasoning and boiled them with the porridge for half an hour. Soon, the air was filled with a fragrant aroma. Not having eaten a normal meal in more than a year, Luther's mouth quickly filled up with saliva. Come, it is ready. After placing the pot of porridge on the dining table, Marcy searched for a few sets of utensils and scooped out 4 bowls of porridge. Ideographic period. The porridge from the pot was steaming, the snow-white rice shimmered as they reflected the light from the lighter. The few of them blew on their porridge and prodded it with their spoons. At long last, they could start eating. They impatiently scooped up a spoonful of porridge. Even though the porridge was hot, it wasn't uncomfortable for them to eat it. A pleasant warmth filled their stomachs as the sweet salty aftertaste of the chicken porridge remained on their tongues. Counting the time that had passed, Lin Sanju had actually eaten a more delicious salmon just 24 hours before. But somehow, this meal of chicken porridge she was having, after her world was destroyed, tasted like something a lifetime ago. Marcy ate a mouthful of porridge and asked Kong Yun coolly, "How did you pass the time alone yesterday?" As Luther wanted to eat, he had set aside his lighter before that. Since it was dark, they could not see Kong Yun's actual expression clearly. They only heard her saying, rather wistfully, "After waking up last night, I kept searching for my husband. Calls were not going through, and the security guards have all fainted. I went out, drove for a couple of rounds and met many people just wandering and stumbling around the streets like madmen. It scared me, so I immediately went home. I bore with it until morning when it was really too hot, so I hid in my washroom and fell asleep. I don't even know how's my husband right now." "Well, did you discover anything about yourself that was different than before?" Lin Sanju could not resist asking. Different than before? I didn't. What are you referring to?" Kong Yun seemed astonished as she knocked her spoon against her bowl. Maybe, her active skills have not been developed. Lin Sanju thought it through. If they were to explain to her about new worlds, posthumans and that sort of thing, it would be more convincing after Kong Yun developed active skills. Consequently, she smiled, "It's nothing. It is a long story, we will tell you some other time. Anyway, what plans do you have later?" Kong Yun immediately replied without a shred of hesitation, "I will go back home to wait for my husband. I will wait for him until he returns. If he comes back and doesn't see me, he will be anxious. That's right, let's eat a little faster. I want to show you my husband's photo later. If you meet him outside, please remember to tell him to go home to look for me." From her words, she did not seem aware that if she waited on, without food and water, she would only die in the end. Perhaps, it wasn't that she was unaware, but rather because she was willing to take the risk, even if there were only a thin thread of hope. The atmosphere at the dining table suddenly became heavy. After quite a while, Lin Sanju finally said, "Okay, if you are running low on food, we will bring some up for you." Contemporary romance. She did not want to shatter the woman's only pillar of support so quickly. Losing one's hope was akin to the cruel climate outside, it was similarly fatal to a person. Kong Yun thanked her gratefully. They finished the small pot of porridge very quickly. After Kong Yun's explanation, the 3 of them gathered their things and followed her downstairs. There were 2 households on each subsequent floor after the penthouse. As the other apartment on the 26th floor had always been empty, Kong Yun left her door unlocked when she left. It simply opened when she just gave it a push. When the 3 of them entered her apartment, they were suddenly stunned. At that moment, the apartment, which was elegantly decorated, was very bright. There were many stylish candelabra all over the large and small surfaces in the room, such as the dining table, coffee table, and flower stand. Each of the candelabra held several cream-colored candles. The lights from the orange flames and a faint fragrance flooded the entire living room. It was like as beautiful as a dreamscape, and was scorchingly hot like a nightmare. Surrounded by the candlelight, Kong Yun smiled bashfully as tears welled up in her eyes. "My husband bought these candles for our wedding anniversary. When I came home that day, the apartment was filled with candles. He even cooked for me." Her voice was caught in her throat. She gathered her hair and searched for a few photo frames as if nothing had happened. After the anniversary, he wanted to throw away the candles. I vehemently disagreed. And look, now it came handy. Kong Yun sniffled as she tearfully passed Lin Sanju a photo. The man in the photo was average looking, his smile was very gentle, and his teeth were white. "Ah," Lin Sanju exclaimed before she said, "I have the impression that I met your husband before, just once downstairs." Lin Sanju explained that she remembered him because, at that time, there was an extremely furious woman over the line with him. The woman screamed about something continuously and was so loud that she could be heard even over the phone. After Lin Sanju had said this, Kang Yun's tears poured down uncontrollably. We had a quarrel that day, I really regret it. If I knew that we will part, I would never shout at him. He is such a gentle person. Marcy tapped lightly on Kang Yun's shoulder and sighed. Luther sat silently on a chair. Just like any man, he did not know what to do when it comes to crying women. After saying a few comforting words to Kang Yun, Lin Sanju stood up, and her eyes swept the apartment aimlessly. Suddenly, she frowned, feeling a little suspicious. Looking carefully, there was something weird about the apartment. The water dispenser in the living room was empty, but there was a full bottle of water right beside it. It was as if the owner did not find it necessary to refill the water dispenser. The owner might not be thirsty, yet the fish tank was empty. There were only a layer of ornamental rocks and a dry, tiny treasure chest in it. When she walked over, there was still a strong fishy smell. The weirdest thing were the potted plants in the apartment, or rather, just pots filled with soil that should have plants in them. The plants were all missing, and there were holes in the soil where they once were. She could even see a few strands of roots. A sudden flash of thought ran through her mind. I'll get a drink for you. Do you have any drinks in your fridge? Lin Sanju hurried to the fridge before she asked Kang Yun abruptly. Before she even received a reply, she pulled open the fridge door. The fridge compartments were almost empty. There were only a few plastic wraps scattered about, those which were used in supermarkets to wrap vegetables. One even had the price tag on. Premium organic carrots, $14.98. At the left compartment of the fridge, there was a neat row of drinks. Lin Sanju was certain from one look, the drinks have never been touched by anyone. Only at that moment did she hear Kang Yun's slightly anxious voice coming from behind her. No, it's okay. I am not thirsty. Thank you. Lin Sanju closed the fridge door and turned to look at the hand that Marcy had placed on Kang Yun. She felt like there was a heavy rock in the pit of her stomach. Marcy, Lin Sanju controlled her facial muscles and tried her best to sound amiable. Can you come over here? I want to ask if you have seen my little silver bottle. Bringing up that little silver bottle, Marcy immediately thought of the ability polishing agent. Marcy did not move from the spot. She was baffled and just replied, I placed it on the sofa, didn't I? As she said this, she was still patting Kang Yun's back. As they left with Kang Yun, they had no choice but to leave the ability polishing agent upstairs. Lin Sanju also knew about that contemporary romance. Lin Sanju suddenly knitted her brows. I've forgotten. She turned to face Kang Yun, saying, blame it all on my bad memory. Can I bring the both of them upstairs with me? Older sister Kang, is it okay if you wait here for a moment? Kang Yun was stunned for a moment. Lin Sanju knew that she, herself, was acting quite abnormally, so she did not give Kang Yun even the chance to reply. She pulled Luther to the entrance and gestured for Marcy to follow. Come, we can also see if there are other useful supplies. Marcy still had a doubtful look, but she stood up and complied. Older sister Kang, don't be afraid. We will come back here soon, Lin Sanju said with a smile and pulled open the front door. Through the little opening before the door closed, Lin Sanju saw Kang Yun sitting in the living room, looking back at her expressionlessly. When the front door closed with a bang, her face was enveloped by the darkness. Just as the door was closed shut, Lin Sanju turned and sprinted upstairs. The two others were confused but followed her quickly. Luther was the first one to react. He murmured, what's the matter? Did you find something amiss? I hope that I overanalyzed it. Her words came out in bits as she vigorously climbed up the stairs with wide strides. I must go upstairs to confirm something first. Within a few minutes, the three of them used their full stamina to reach the top floor. Lin Sanju's heart pounded hard. Without taking any time to steady her breathing, she pushed open the door and rushed into the 38th floor apartment. The room was pitch dark. Give me the lighter, Lin Sanju shouted. Hearing her, Luther threw over the lighter and with a click, she lit it in her hand. The orange light from the flame lit half the dining area dimly. There were 4 bowls on the dining table. Luther and Marcy looked at each other and could not help looking at the area that Lin Sanju had illuminated. Marcy spotted the oddity quicker than Luther. Why didn't she? Ads by PubFuture. Previously, they ate in the dark and left immediately, so no one realized anything strange. Now that they looked carefully, they discovered that there was something wrong. There were messy piles of chicken bones and skins beside 3 of the bowls. But beside Kang Yun's bowl, there was nothing. Well, this is nothing new. Maybe she likes to eat chicken bones. Just as Luther was about to say this, he saw Lin Sanju's serious expression as she brought Kong Yun's bowl closer to them. He scanned it and immediately swallowed his words. In this scathingly hot hyperthermal hell, even posthumans like themselves were constantly in a state of mild dehydration. This was the reason that they had to appropriately drink water every now and then. Even though they had decided to settle down at the supermarket, each drop of water was extremely precious to them. Naturally, they drank up all the porridge soup before. However, there was still half a bowl of shimmering white broth in Kong Yun's bowl. When she checked with a spoon, Lin Sanju found that there wasn't a single grain of rice left and all the chicken had also been eaten. Only the most precious thing in this new world, water, was left totally untouched by Kong Yun. Why doesn't she need to drink? Luther frowned as he bit his lip so tightly that there was a mark. Lin Sanju had a grim expression. Thanks to her keen senses, she managed to piece the random fragments of clues together. But if her intuition was right, Kong Yun was a thornier problem than any duolujang. Lin Sanju said each word quietly. She lied. She definitely already developed one active skill, and the way things are, I roughly know what her ability is. The chicken meat, the rice, the plants, the goldfishes and the vegetables in the fridge. After she had placed the bowl down, her gaze fell on both Luther's and Marcy's faces. She said with some seriousness, it is very likely that Kong Yun's ability is that she can convert all forms of biological material into the nutrients that she needs for survival. I guess that she only has to touch her target and she can rapidly absorb it entirely without a single trace. How much time did we spend eating? Yet, it now seems as if the chicken and rice never even existed in the first place. With a SS's sound, Marcy gasped. All forms of biological material. Absorption by contact. This isn't just an ability for survival. If it is used in combat, one would die if they were touched. But that doesn't explain why she doesn't have to drink water. Luther's face turned white as he recalled how they bumped into each other when they were going downstairs. Could it be that her ability altered her body, so she is unable to intake water like us? Maybe, for her, she can only obtain the required nutrients and fluids from the absorption of biological materials. Marcy suggested, we had spent almost half a day with her, if she had any ill will, we wouldn't be alive now. Lin Sanju nodded her head. This was what she thought of and hoped for as well. But she feared. The thought just came to her mind, but before she had the time to express herself, Kong Yun's voice rang out in the darkness. Why do you need such a long time to just grab something? The three of them froze. Did they take that long? Lin Sanju could not help looking at the time on her digital watch. They spent only 10 minutes from the time they came upstairs. She could not tell what Kong Yun's purpose was for following them so closely. Noticing that the two others were silent and just standing blankly, Marcy quickly raised her voice and called over. Wait for us at the door. We will come out soon. Kong Yun replied with an, oh, but she continued walking toward them as if she did not hear Marcy. She slowly dragged her feet and stepped into the apartment. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Pausing for 2 seconds, Marcy laughed. Hey, we are leaving now, you didn't have to come in. Kong Yun said softly, I am scared to be on my own. I just want to be with you guys, will you mind? While she said this, she walked closer to the three of them and revealed a smile. She stretched out her hand and held onto Marcy's arm. Lin Sanju's heart leapt. Just when she was about to intervene, Luther, who was standing behind her, had already pulled Marcy away from Kong Yun with one quick movement. He was so fast that she could only see a dark shadow. Marcy only managed to steady herself when Luther growled out, what do you want? His anger made his voice tremble a little. This was the first time Lin Sanju witnessed that fair, handsome young man getting angry. You already developed your abilities long before, right? We already know this. Tell us, why are you following us? Ah, Kong Yun seemed slightly startled. She could not react for a moment. After a while, she said, sounding troubled, there is really something wrong with my body. I did not dare to tell all of you because I was afraid that you will be scared of me. So all of you actually knew. Marcy looked at her, guardedly. Trying to get a confirmation, she asked cautiously, you didn't mean us any harm, right? Lin Sanju instantly shot her a look. Marcy was nice and everything, but she could be too trusting sometimes. If Kong Yun really planned something, would she honestly say that out? Harm all of you. Kong Yun paused. The words she said next was beyond Lin Sanju's expectation. No, no, no. I just need one of you. It will be too cruel to absorb all three of you. The sentence was like a stop button, and everything froze. Seeing their shocked face seemed to have hardened Kang Yun's heart. She sighed and continued, actually, I really don't want to absorb any living being. But I feel weak. I have absorbed everything in my house and even those security guards downstairs, but I still feel weak, so weak that it is uncomfortable. Lin Sanju could not decide if she should be angry or she should laugh. Probably because she saw Lin Sanjo's expression, Kang Yun wiped her own tears. When I first saw all of you, I did not have that intention. But as time went on, I couldn't resist. Ask yourselves truthfully, if taking another person's life mean that you can survive, would you do it? She did not actually plan to listen to their answers and instead lifted one finger. She said, almost as if pleading, I will just absorb one of you, really. Just one. Marcy, Luther, didn't both of you just met her yesterday? She is just a passing acquaintance. There was an almost deranged smile on her face. Without this girl, both of you can go on living your lives the way you wanted to, it wouldn't be a loss. You really did plan this out well for us. Lin Sanju smiled coldly without looking at Luther's and Marcy's expressions. She only felt a brewing fire of anger in her heart. Hearing this, Kang Yun turned to look at her. Lady, I don't see your boyfriend beside you. I figured both of you were just playing around. You won't understand the feelings between my husband and me. I must not die. Even if everyone dies, I must not die. I will wait for my husband at home. Luther could not stand listening to her anymore and retorted, enough of your bullshit. If you want to eat someone, go back home and eat yourself. Lin Sanju felt a sense of relief, and she quickly smiled at the two of them. When she was about to face Kang Yun again, her eyes stopped at her own bedroom door. In the dark, the door seemed so black as if it was a part of the entire universe. Behind the door was a double bed. Instantaneously, a flash of thought pierced through her mind. Before Lin Sanju was aware, she already asked the question, Kang Yun, you mentioned that when you woke up last night, only his pajamas was left on the bed. Yes, why did? Kang Yun did not finish her sentence, and her face immediately turned as white as a sheet when she saw Lin Sanjo's expression. Lin Sanju smiled vengefully, showing her white teeth. She stared at Kang Yun's face. Bingo. We found your husband. Just as if someone had added water to her memories and made some porridge with them, her memories were like a cloudy broth. She could only remember herself lying asleep in her own bed as it gradually became warmer and warmer. She became more and more thirsty. Suddenly, she felt a gentle concern from the man beside her. She grabbed his hand and whispered, I'm thirsty. Just about then, you unconsciously activated your ability. In that daze you unwittingly absorbed your husband. When you became clear-headed, obviously only his pajamas was left behind. Lin Sanjo's cold voice reverberated in the dark room. Toward the woman who was now sitting on the floor, Lin Sanju dreaded and feared her ability. How powerful is her ability? In that short time that she was in a daze, she actually managed to absorb an entire full-grown man. She did not even leave a strand of hair. Kang Yun stared blankly into the air. She had a weird expression. She looked as though she was about to cry or laugh. Just as her expression turned malevolent as she managed a ha, but her tears fell anyway. Nonsense. What do you know? You only said that because you don't want me to absorb you. So you're spouting nonsense. Really? Then, let me ask you a question. When you woke up, did you still feel thirsty? Lin Sanju challenged softly. This sentence was the last straw which broke the camel's back. It totally devastated Kang Yun. Suddenly, Kang Yun let out a shrill cry. The others were so shocked that they could not help retreating backward. Thereafter, she buried her face in her arms and curled up on the ground. She rocked her body gently as if she was comforting herself as she started crying loudly. I don't know. Kang Yun screamed and cried at the same time. Her face was covered in tears, and her words were muffled and unclear. Everyone said that I was too good for him. But in fact, he was too good for me, too good. He was such a nice person, such a nice. Her cries sounded like fabric being torn. It was filled with deep wrath and pain, so much so that one could not help feeling fearful and uneasy when they heard it. Why are you still just standing there? Suddenly, she felt her arm being pulled. She turned her head to find that it was Marcy. Marcy whispered, let's take this chance to get away. Do you want to wait for her to regain her composure and absorb you? Lin Sanju only regained her senses then. It turned out that Luther, with a tensed look on his face, had pressed his body against the soft and already crept step by step out of the living room. When he saw that the two of them were still standing at the same stop, he was seriously mad at them. He hurried-mouthed, "Are you too stupid?" The two of them hastened their steps and slipped past Kong Yun. The latter seemed to have forgotten where she was, while she wailed heedless to the things around her, her 10 fingers dug deep into the sofa. She made several deep holes in the sofa's soft material and was absolutely ignorant to the movements of the people near her. Just like that, under the sound of her anguished cries, the few of them escaped quietly and sprinted downstairs. After heart-stoppingly nervous situation, their trip back to the supermarket was a contrastingly less eventual journey. They jogged all the way back to the road in front of the shopping mall. They swiftly moved through the queue of cars, walking speedily between the cars. The scurry of footsteps woke up the dying people who were in their cars. When their group walked past the cars, quite a few people in the cars managed to sit up, pounding powerlessly on their car windows in despair. Even though they were alive, their expressions were not different from the dead, without a single spark of life. Ads by PubFuture. Lin Sanju looked at them with sympathy. Within the 10 overarms behind those car windows, she wondered how many of them could survive until they successfully evolved. Wait, Luther, who had been leading them, suddenly stopped. He turned to instruct Marcy, "Keep a lookout on the road, make sure that Kong Yun is not following us. Xiao Ju, hand me your knife." With a white flash, Lin Sanju handed him her chef's knife and asked puzzledly, "What's wrong?" Luther tilted his head to the white Volkswagen Bora, his face stiffened. "Look at that, that person is going to change into a duolujang soon." Following where Luther gestured to, Lin Sanju felt a layer of goosebumps rising. A dark brown face was pressing tightly against the windscreen of the Volkswagen Bora. It was impossible to tell its gender. Most of its moisture had already evaporated, leaving only a layer of wrinkly skin which piled at the two sides of its cheek. Its mouth area was protruding out as if a mouthpart would burst through its skin any moment. One of its eyelids had already fallen off, and the other eyelid swayed as it hung down precariously over one of its eyeballs. The pair of white eyeballs were staring motionlessly at the three of them. Holding his breath, Luther cautiously walked toward the side of the car. The eyeballs within the car also swirled to look at his side. Crash! With a shattering sound, the car window by the driver's seat was smashed in. Following shortly, even before the person in the car could react, Luther struck and thrust the knife into the brain of that half-man half-duolujang. The process was as quick as lightning, and before Lin Sanju even had the time to respond, she heard a rasping, guttural sound and the body in the car slipped back wearily into the seat. After he casually cleaned the knife on the shirt of the corpse, he walked back and returned Lin Sanju her knife. Seeing her frowning, conflicted face, Luther could only sigh. "I know that it is uncomfortable for you, but we can't just leave it like that, right?" Lin Sanju nodded her head and kept the knife. Even though that person still had the visage of a human figure, it was obvious that the person could not be saved. Apparently, she had better try to get used to such a scene in the future. While Lin Sanju continued forward with her wide strides again, she tried to stomach the waves of disgust that she felt. It was quite different from killing in self-defense after all. They did not know if Kong Yun was too overwhelmed by grief, but she appeared not to chase after them. The three of them ran into the supermarket, shocked but unharmed, and they quickly pulled down the metal shutter. Only after they locked the shutter from inside, did Lin Sanju slid to the ground leaning on the shutter, exhaling a deep breath. Marcy grabbed a few bottles of water and handed out a bottle to each of them. She took out the ability polishing agent that she did manage to retrieve previously and placed it on one of the shelves beside them, using it for lighting. Who would have known? It was much stronger than the candles. A corner of the supermarket was lit up as if there was a fluorescent light there. After resting for few minutes, Lin Sanjo's mind could not help drifting back to the piece of paper. "So, the item that we found just now," as she said this, she pulled out the piece of paper. Suddenly, the two remaining people also focused their concentration on that piece of paper. The handwriting on the paper could clearly be seen under the silver light. As what she saw was too mind-blowing, Lin Sanju inadvertently crushed the sides of the paper. Open black lens bracket Visa close black lens bracket. Place of issue, Black Death City. Valid destination, Hyperthermal Hell. Valid from 6 months prior to the descent of Hyperthermal Hell. This visa was issued by the consular officer of Black Death City. Despite looking at it once before, Lin Sanju was still dumbfounded. She passed the visa over to Luther and Marcy. Both of them were also filled with perplexity. I don't understand. When we came here, we did not have any visa, but we could enter this place anyway. Luther muttered several times repetitively. He flipped over the visa multiple times, examining it. If we think it through carefully, your situation was different from his. Lin Sanju paused, seemingly to think. You had to wait for a full 14 months before you could enter another mutated dimension, but when Ren Nan came here to my world, it was still normal, its mutation had not even started. Apparently, a visa could not only assign a destination, but it could also allow a person to travel to a dimension before it mutates. Contemporary romance. Marcy pointed at the line, journey performed, at the back of the visa. She explained softly, Ren Nan definitely came here with this visa. Both of you have never heard anything about such a thing like this visa. Lin Sanju pressed on with her questions unrelentingly even though it seemed hopeless. Both of them shook their heads as expected. Luther laid the visa on the ground, staring at it, saying bitterly, if we knew there was such a thing, we wouldn't have to wake up to an exploding bomb the previous time. That made sense. Lin Sanju lowered her head, her heart was filled with an incomprehensible feeling. If we first ignore how that man with the surname Ren got the visa, just imagine the advantages of entering a dimension 6 months before. Luther clicked his tongue, speaking to Lin Sanju, you can start making all sorts of preparation when it is still peaceful. Be it supplies, or body training, your chance of survival will far succeed the original inhabitants of that world. That's true, but I think that this sort of visa is much more useful for Ren Nan. No matter how well we prepare, we cannot guarantee that everything will work out. However, with his ability, he could gain a lot more potential growth value in the 6 months. As she thought about the past disorienting half a year, a cold self-deprecating smile appeared on Lin Sanjo's face. Luther sighed and patted Lin Sanjo's shoulder to show his comfort in a seemingly matured manner. I wonder how he got the visa. Even if we wanted to find out, there is no one we can ask. Marcy was still fiddling with the paper obstinately. He doesn't have many items, so I don't think he had been to many places. Luther's eyes suddenly brightened, and he said, smiling, if we can find the consular officer of hyperthermal hell, maybe we can survive together. We don't have split up when we get transported to another world. Struggling through the infinite number of apocalyptic world, everyone comes and goes like drifting duckweed on water. This is indeed a troubling matter. It was a rare opportunity to meet someone that one can share a good rapport with. If they can become companions, it can't get any better. The problem they had was finding the consular officer. All three of them had this same thought. Lin Sanju was just about to speak when they heard a neither light nor heavy knock on the door. You all must be inside, right? Why don't you open the door? Kong Yun still had that nasally hoarse voice that one has after bawling, but her tone was a lot calmer.